Sometimes you make a video and you think, should I? Like, should I? Or should I just kind of quietly get on with everything and let other people have those conversations? But as you can see from the title of this video, I'm attempting to answer the question, can Arsenal actually win the double? Now, in English football, the double is the Premier League and the FA Cup. But when we're talking the double, we're talking the Premier League and the Champions League. Now, I was on TalkSport when we beat Atletico Madrid 4-0, and I was asked that question. And I thought, this is way too early. We still have so much more football to watch in Europe, certainly in the Premier League. At that point, Liverpool was struggling, but not like this. Man City was struggling, but didn't have back-to-back defeats. And now I'm sat here thinking, when I hear other content creators, because I've been watching some of the reaction from Arsenal beating Bayern Munich comprehensively, especially in that second half, and people are asking that very, very question. And I think the reason it feels ridiculous to even talk about it for a second is we haven't won the Premier League since 2004, and we've never won the Champions League. We haven't actually lifted silverware as this current group and this iteration of Arsenal. Yes, Mikel Arteta did it in 2020, lifting the FA Cup, but we haven't with this particular group of players. And that is something for me, right? That matters. The fact that this group haven't actually got over the line in terms of winning. Because if they'd even picked up a Carabao Cup, an FA Cup or something like that, or got to a Champions League final, I'd be saying they are really they know how to win. They're really on the brink. And I know we kind of have been with some title races, but when you talk about really getting close to the big ones, it's essentially the final day against Man City in 23-24. Other than that, I don't think you can say we've been supremely close to winning any of the big titles. We have in terms of level we've played at, but maybe only 23-24 and that Premier League title have we actually felt like, yeah, we're on the brink of silverware. So the question of could Arsenal even win the double? Forget winning one of them, which this season would be a roaring success. Could they do it? Could they do both in the same season? So, to answer that question, you got to look at the level of the team, the level they're playing at. You got to look at the competition around Europe. You got to talk about mentality and things that could possibly go wrong. Now, normally this video I would do as a proper research piece on the Goonerverse, but I've actually done that already. If you go back to the channel, you'll see that there's a video named, I think the title is, The Data Says Arsenal Can Do It. And there's two pictures of, well, the Premier League title and the Champions League trophy next to Mikel Arteta. And the data at the time said the football is sustainable, the level Arsenal are playing at is of one of winning major silverware. But when you look at that win against Bayern Munich, I really think it would have sent shockwaves and made a statement around Europe. I think a lot of teams and a lot of fans who maybe don't always tune into the Premier League, and even those who do, would have stopped and gone, wow, that was unbelievably impressive. And it's because we took a Bayern side who were playing good football in that first half, and we then started to nullify their threats in the second half and turned the game on its head to a point which we utterly dominated who many people are calling the best team in Europe. A lot of people felt that was a head-to-head of the two best, and Arsenal came out convincing winners, which is extraordinary to say. So you've made your impression on Europe 3 times in a calendar year. 3-1 Bayern, 4-0 Atletico, an Atletico that just smashed Real Madrid, may I say, and 3-0 Real Madrid back in April. And I think we gave PSG a good go en route to them winning the Champions League. So you look at that, you look at what we've now started to do in Europe in 2025 in particular, and I think you can look at beating PSV 7-1 away and things like that. I think you can look at other results and say Arsenal have looked comfortable in Europe for a while. Beating PSG only 12, 13 months ago, I think matters too. And then you couple it with what we know of this team, the ideas they've got on the pitch, the tactical variety, the squad depth, the players still to return. And then you look at what we're doing in the Premier League. You know, it's a bit of a spoiler, but Matisse is on loose cannons. You'll see this very soon. And he said that Arsenal were the only team in the league playing title-winning football. And I agree with that too. So when these questions are being thrown around by TalkSport, and then I'm seeing other people ask it, I sit there and I go, oh, it's too soon. Like, we haven't got over the line for one in so long, and in case of the other competition, ever. So I sit there and I go, slow down. Like, let's just take a breather. But I do think it's a legitimate question to ask. It's not will Arsenal win the double. I'm not sitting here going, yep, we're going to win them both. Like, that's not the answer I'm going to give you in this video. But can they? I think for the first time ever in my life, I can sit here and go, yeah, Arsenal are capable of winning both the Premier League and the Champions League in the same season. They are capable of doing that. And the reason I say that is because momentum has become such a big thing in football, especially in an era where there seem to be more injuries than ever before, where tactically teams are always figuring themselves out, or figuring each other out, should I say. That I think when you've got momentum and belief, that can kind of trump anything. And I always go back to the Kevin De Bruyne quotes when Man City won the treble. He said, people asked if we got tired, but we didn't because we kept playing. It was muscle memory. We were playing week in, week out. Premier League, FA Cup, Champions League. Remember, they went out to Southampton in the Carabao Cup that year. So they could easily have won a quadruple, especially when I think it was Man United won it that season. Was it Man? Yeah, I think it was. So Man City and Kevin De Bruyne have told us, as have other Man City coaches en route to these kind of major long runs and these sort of big multi-trophy seasons they've had. They talk about momentum, and Arsenal have that. Arsenal have a momentum that is only being fueled by the return of Ødegaard, Madueke, Martinelli, Gyökeres, Havertz and Jesus still to return at some point. Gabriel, we hope it's only a case of a month out. We haven't had any updates on that. And when you look at that, when you look at the fact that there's so much of our spine still to return, and there's still so many combinations we want to see, like Eze on the left with Ødegaard in central midfield, like Gyökeres or Havertz leading the line with this type of midfield behind. When you look at all these things, Nketiah at left back is something we've talked about seeing at some point. Madueke coming on regularly, either on the left or for Saka against tired legs like he did yesterday, and scoring. When you look at that and the fact that that's to come for Arsenal, you've got to be incredibly encouraged by what Arsenal could do this season. Incredibly encouraged. So, what stands in our way of doing a double? Well, I mentioned mentality. Now, I think it's hard enough to get over the line with one, but I sometimes think when you set your standards even higher, when you set your standards beyond just winning games, that is when you're onto something really special. I don't like when we concede a goal, let alone when we draw or lose a football match. I barely like when we concede shots. And the pride I take in Bayern and Spurs not having really got anywhere near our goal, that goes beyond just winning football matches. That's the level we're at. Not we want to beat you. We want to beat you and you haven't even got near us. Now, when all is said and done, right, teams will figure us out a little bit and will cause us problems. I expect Chelsea to be a very, very, very difficult game on the weekend. I really, really do. But, I have to, at what point, when, as an Arsenal fan, I'm allowed to be confident about my team? Maybe when they've got over the line, like maybe that's the final hurdle, them actually getting over the line with one of these competitions, so I can sit there and go, no, I've seen they've done it. That is a big thing. Of course it is. But otherwise, Arsenal have done everything else up to that point, and that includes in Europe, that includes in big games against our rivals, that includes so many, many things. So, again, what stands in our way? Mentality, potentially. The have you done it before? I think the other thing that stands in our way is the evolution of other teams around us. It wouldn't surprise me if one or two teams in these other competitions suddenly rise to the top a little bit. They suddenly come out of nowhere building a degree of momentum. Now, that could be Chelsea. We face them on the weekend. If they were to beat us, you've got to think that would do something for them, wouldn't it? Man City typically always get better post-January and even February. So if they are within 4 to 7 points of us going into February and they're building momentum, you can't rule out a team like that have Erling Haaland and Pep Guardiola being a real, real problem for us. PSG, we beat 2-0 at the Emirates quite comprehensively, quite convincingly last season, back in October, I think it was October 1st. They then got better, tweaked a few things, added Kvaratskhelia in January, kicked on a level, and looked by far and away the best team in Europe. But we weren't saying that till about March. Yeah, till about March time. Even after they knocked out Liverpool, a lot of people thought, well, Liverpool could have gone through, though PSG were very good. So Bayern might click. Musiala could return. Maybe they sign a player. I don't know. City could bring in one or two players, and these teams could go on a level. Chelsea might build the kind of momentum it feels like they're building at the moment. So you never rule out, basically, a real challenger coming through and putting you under immense pressure. And when that immense pressure comes, that's when you worry about the mentality of Arsenal, who haven't got over the line, where Bayern are used to winning trophies, Man City are used to winning trophies. That could be something that sits in our way. I do worry about injuries sometimes because we've had so many of them. I do think it can disrupt the rhythm of a team. But generally, the question that is being asked, for the first time ever, I'm saying is a fair one. You know, people are asking, could Arsenal actually win the double? And I'm sat there going, yeah, they could. You want a prediction? No, I don't think we will. I think the funny thing about football is anything can happen. And I expect us to be somewhat figured out as the season goes on. I expect momentum to halt slightly and Arsenal to have to come through a patch in the season. And I expect the weight of trying to get one, let alone two, and then the FA Cup and the Carabao, the weight of trying to get these trophies over the line may take its toll at some point. I don't think you go from winning nothing, basically, if we're being really frank about it, to suddenly racking them all up. Even Liverpool, the year they won the Champions League and finally got over the line with Jurgen Klopp, they didn't win the Premier League. That then followed, but then that year they won the Premier League, they didn't win the Champions League. Because teams always just have an answer. Teams always find a way. And the thing about football is, like we saw with the Richarlison goal and Bayern yesterday with a brilliant goal, sometimes you don't have to do too much to score. And other teams have quality that hurts you in different ways. Sometimes you have a bad day in front of goal. So, no, I don't think we'll do the double, if I'm really, really honest. But where this was a question I was asked a month ago, and I laughed it off and said, let's just not. Let's just focus on, winning as many games as possible and trying to do something we haven't done before, which is win the Premier League, or one of the big ones, which we talk about as the Premier League and Champions League. Where I used to think it was a conversation I didn't really want to entertain, I do think it was actually worth talking about because so many people are. And that's the level we're playing at. It's a massive compliment to Arsenal. So, like I said, set your standards, Arsenal, higher than what would kind of be deemed a really great season anyway. So when I said we don't like losing or drawing games, that's not where our standard is at the moment. Our standard is, no, we don't like you scoring goals or having shots. Now, if your standard is that you really don't want those things to happen, then you're very rarely going to lose or draw many games of football. If your standard is, we're going for all of them, we can win doubles, trebles, we can do it. That's what we're aiming for this season. You'd expect that if things were to go slightly wrong, you're still coming out with some trophies. And that's where the very highest standards are with clubs like Real Madrid, Man City over the years, Liverpool last season. And if Arsenal can get their mind there, then I am more confident than ever that we're going to have a real season to remember. All right, I'll leave it there, people. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you don't find this video distasteful anyway. And what I mean by that is we could lose to Chelsea on the weekend and then suddenly this looks like a really stupid thing to talk about. But I think we, even if we did, one bad result amongst the many great results we've had this season, from Bayern to Newcastle to Man United away to Tottenham to Real Madrid last season to Atletico, I think it's time we start to rebat this team, even if they're to have a minor blip, like against Sunderland. Come on, this team are doing big things. Let's credit them. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. I want your thoughts in the comment section below. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet and you want to be kept up to date with our latest reactions. I know this isn't a news piece, but news is also what are people talking about, what's being said about Arsenal. And I thought it was worth covering that too. Big thanks. Catch you in a bit.